Our next speaker is Lama. He is a University of Auckland lecturer and founder of New Pacific Architecture. He's a licensed carpenter, designer, and architectural consultant as well. He holds 3 chiefly guardian titles from Upolu and Savaii in Samoa. He specializes in co-design with Pacific and South Auckland communities and with a focus on PhD research by creative practice.
Aotearoa tēnā koe, e whare tū nei, tēnā koe, e tangata te whenua, mana whenua, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora koutou katoa, koe ngō Lama, ko Hamona motu, ko Vaia te maunga, ko vai moso lufi lufi, whasto yuta, pua te kāinga, ko marae o te tūranga waiwai te lalo ngā fua te whonga seunga, te malaitia, ko whamatua inu pista to tole awa te hapu, te tipuna, ko Samoana, te tangata. Tūlona le whanua mo na tapua whanua, tūlona foi le malai, maona lewa malai, tūlona foi le whale, monona ano whale, e momo pe lama tūlo le atua wa le atua e o le mana man malosi meo malava, o le atua e o le aso mana tātua wha moi moi. Pacific greetings everyone, my name is Lama. I won't give you the long version there. I bring my ancestors into this space through these titles that have been bestowed on me from family. Really important for us young Matai or chief, for lack of better words, guardians, because as the world sort of becomes more modern, identity starts to take a bit of a hit. And the positive thing about some of the families from the ancestral lands is that they try and bestow these titles on some of the generations that are outside the islands. Not only that, but you know, they start asking for money when something's going on back home. So I've kind of had the honor and the privilege for building a fale. It's my very first fale. The brief was that the primary school was looking for a Pacific space and they wanted a fale. There's a lot of different interpretations and variations of fale throughout Auckland and probably around Wellington as well. So the brief landed in my hands. I've got to thank Peta, who was here. She chucked my name in the hat. And then here we are. So the brief came from the school. They wanted a structure that could outreach to the Pacific community of the local area, just so that they were able to sort of try and connect back to the school. And not only that, but the fale sort of became this instrument or this tool for storytelling. And also that it wasn't just James Cook's story in this part of the world. There was also Polynesians and Pacific people that were navigating around this moana for thousands of years. So this is just one part or one interpretation of a fale amongst many for the brief that was called on by the school principal. Also really important to me is this va, or this relationship between the Moananui Fale, or the people of the Pacific, and the local mana whenua or tangata te whenua. So I said to the principal that I'm not going to design and build this thing unless I have the blessings of mana whenua. Te Kawarawa Maki, which is sort of more on the west side of Auckland. So I had a quick whono or a meeting with them, and they gave me their blessings. And there's a saying in our culture, and I know Neri Whanua Albert's here, e tari whaloalo le whaloalo, which means that if you respect me, the only right thing to do culturally for us is to respect you back. And out of that, I said that I'll nominate one of these po in a dedication to mana whenua. Not only the po, but also the heke or the rafter that will come down on the po. So also another really important thing I've got to distinguish is that in our culture, and possibly around the Pacific as well, if you come to our house, we acknowledge you through your whakapapa. And I know that tangata te whenua does that as well on the marae. And so there's a host visit relationship there. The host will obviously recite the genealogy, it's only the respectful thing to do. And in reciprocating of that, the visitor's also got to recite the whakapapa of the host. And I thought that this is really important to me as well, and I had to get it right. I had to sort of dig around and talk to one of the members of the Te Kawarawa Maki Mana Whenua group, who was very kind in giving me the right whakapapa. So being a young Samoan orator, Matai, I tried to slot that into an oratory. And this is where I thought it would go. I have sent it to my contact, Mana Whenua. Her lip was quivering and she had a tear in her eye, and she was really happy that this relationship was nourished and enhanced. So I'm just going to quickly read it out. I feel that I must read it out if I'm going to present this structure anywhere. So, tulona le paia whaasinu le sā, ma whaingatā o ta whia ki te rangi, o le tūpuna o le ele le sā o ki rangi sisifo, a waile iwi o te Kawarawa Maki. Tulona I maunga o puke tōtara ma hikurangi, whapea foi le aba o Waitakere, o lo soso I le te manuka nuka o Hutiroa, ma te Watamata na moana tulona, na rau po a maki, na tohu whakahi, tulona te wao nui a tiriwa te nahere, tulona oe, raka taura o le tohunga, tulona I te ao o te whenua te tangata. Tulona lava, le tausiwa te la wale malu ya tainui, te Kawarawa Maki, o tau sā ma whaingatā lena, ia e mesele ele le fau po le whanua sā, lewa whaatua whale nei. So that's more or less their whakapapa in a kind of a direct way of, from a Samoan lens, and sliding that into an acknowledgement or a whaatulima. Okay, so tulona ia. Okay, so the brief, as I mentioned, called for connecting out to the Pacific community, but it wasn't just so much the Pacific, it was also non-Pacific. And I wanted the principal to understand that it wasn't just for Pacific people or Maori people, it was for everyone. So obviously there's proverbs, and I know previous presentations talked about that. I'm a big fan of proverbs. I think as a young orator as well in my culture, it's a really beautiful way of connecting things and enhancing things and relationships as well, which is very, very key. So some of the Moananui Fale and Moananui Fale, okay, I've heard many of my elders in my family speak about that. It's trying to say, look, if you come from a stable home, you leave that stable home, you're a stable person. That's more or less trying to, in a more literal sense, okay? This one here, e leo le fale, o le ano fale, so it's not so much the fale itself, but it's the flesh of the fale, which could be pointing at things like people and their relationships. Okay, so we started out with the blessings from the Reverend Minister, who blessed the ground as well before Donna was able to break soil. You know, more these beautiful proverbs, and I know all across the Pacific, they got their own proverbs. I came across a book that had a few of them, and it was just beautiful to read. I think it's a really lovely way to connect. So this one here, lupe wa fui fatasi e bao ese. I thought that would be a nice way to sort of describe this fale space, that we sort of come from different parts or different regions, and we were gathered in that space of the fale. Okay, so very unprecedented project for me. But I remember dropping a lot of F-bombs on site, and I was hoping that the students didn't really hear. But it was challenging. But I think after the first one, I've taken the learnings on. So I think hopefully the next one will be a lot quicker. So you can see the site. I think Peter and Albert's presentation talked about the Wi-Fi, and then obviously the pole. We had to get these bang on because we designed the roof and it was laminated somewhere here in Wellington, I think it is, or Levin. So the roof structure had to fit exactly to the post, so we couldn't afford some discrepancies in the setup of the post. Okay, Paul, Madame Paul, Utupoto, Masoa. Okay, some of these members or structural members of the Fale, some of these proverbs are drawn from as well. So, that pretty much took up my whole summer and pretty much the year. This project is still going. I lectured full-time at uni, so I only was able to afford the weekends and the odd afternoon, but it was really well worth it. Oops. So I had my wife and my son who could have done other things other than turning up and helping their dad out. But yeah, it was all worth it. I think just a lot of head scratching, especially when I got to the roof, because I remember just things not making sense to me in a conventional sense, because the structure happens to be quite unconventional. But after talking to Tufunga, and I know I've got to acknowledge Albert, I went to Samoa, just got back yesterday, and after talking to some traditional Tufungas, it's just amazing how the curved ends of these structures were held up, because a lot of them don't need this guy here. They don't need this rafter to hold up the ends. But it's the lashings and the way these dowel systems and the battens work kept the roof sort of in one sort of entity. So the wind loads and the forces are all kind of relying or all bouncing off the roof structure. But it's kind of more the lashings and how it's organized. It's almost like a diaphragm. Diaphragm is, in a building sense, it's like a brace. So I had a crack at lashing as well. I remember the first row of the purlins that I did there, and it almost took me the whole afternoon to do that one row. And then as I finished that, I turned over my shoulder and I could see how many of these junctions I had to do. So it was a real lengthy time. I remember reaching out to some friends and colleagues on Facebook if they can come and I'll put some gas in their car and feed them. We only had a few, and then I couldn't get them to come back. They only came back once. So colleague here, some of you may know Dr. Jeremy Treadwell. I've got Amo on the back there. I've got a former Manu Samoa player here as well doing it. And some of these guys really, like, you just showed them once and away they went. It was just automatic. So there were lashings, these guys here, what they call a asu, or the dowels, and they were lashing onto the purlins here. So they each have their own sort of tie mechanism. I mean, I know we use nails and bolts and all that sort of stuff, and believe me, it's got a few of that here. But it was just getting the lashings on top of it to sort of give it that authentic look and feel. Okay, more proverbs. Placing ole whae le au au. A tātou velo asu iai, quite a well-known proverb as well in the oratory form. And, we could, I've said it, they can describe the main reason of doing something before we add suggestions. So the au could be this what's the name of our section of our talk? Co-design. Okay, so that could be the au, and then we'll just, these other things that we're talking about could be, as a suggestion, just something that we're adding to that conversation. Okay. Had some visits. This is Julie Stout and brother from another mother there, Bill Mackay. Another gesture, another kind of gifting to mana whenua. I wanted to kind of celebrate Matariki being, so I lashed these stones on the curved ends of the roof. And yeah, they were very happy with I mean, you know, we used to kind of do this traditionally in terms of constellations and teaching the moko, while the sort of the senior navigator stands and points to the roof, showing the different constellations in the sky and the movements of the swells and all that sort of stuff, teaching the young people how to kind of navigate. So, okay, really important as well with this pole whenua, and that was carved by a rep from mana whenua, who is Rarotongan. So they gave him his blessing. He's doing such a great job. He's finally finished it. It looks amazing. But I kind of saw the pole as this umbilical cord between the whenua and the fale and the roof. But obviously, as I mentioned there, it's located towards the side of the tala or the curved ends, nominated for where high chiefs and important people sit. So, you guys may or may not know, very well-known whunga in terms of the Lama. Got here, Felipe Tohi. He holds a Samoan chiefly title, very high for people of his caliber in terms of his art. But he was able to, I gave him the narrative of this fale structure being representing all of us. And I think he took the motifs and obviously evolve and make those into something that would represent not only just the Pacific people, but also Māori and non-Pacific, non-Māori. So very well-respected person in his field. Okay, ko launga, oratory, the spoken oratories, the formal oratories. These were the sort of the nominated posts where they would sit in an ideal, say, ava or kava ceremony. Okay, now some of the motifs that Felipe was able to lash for this particular fale. You can see there, talked about a lot of its navigation through stars and birds and people, fish, and this idea of the net that kind of became this collective motif for everybody to use the fale. Okay, utupoto, soa, and lava. Okay, that's the sort of the whitu up onto the utupoto. Yeah. Okay, this is kind of for the longevity of these structures, you obviously materials would have to will come into play here. I'm using asphalt shingles, so I had to use a harder substrate for the roof so that these shingles can be fixed to or nailed to. That's what it looked like 2 weeks ago, and I'm expanding the floor outwards and to include a kind of a basalt rock surround. So that'll come out another ½ meter, and then the basalt rock will go around the pipe there. Okay, some of the very handy gentlemen on site. Obviously, Sopole Lama. I've got Dave, the carver, and I've got Tofi Lau there as kind of a contractor to help me push it along as well. And that's me. I thought I'd just put this image up. It kind of shows resilience, but it's a brother-in-law of mine who's got a pit on the split, and he's got a steering wheel at the end of it. So he's sitting there steering it while nephew there sort of dusts off the the pig as well. So I think things sort of evolve in the community and all that sort of stuff. And he's from Lely Whanau Albert's village, so maybe that's what they do in that village. But any questions? Oh. This is Glen Eden Primary, west of Auckland. Great, wow, awesome. Thanks.